What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hops Geek News. We are a podcast that talks about comic books, movies, TV shows, while most often drinking a beer of the week. We have a really special episode today as Tyrell Cannon is going to be joining us. You might have heard that name before, but they have a new comic book coming out this week from Image Comics called The Schlub. Make sure that you check that out. We're going to talk some spoiler-free things about that comic book. But first things first, some housekeeping items. I'm Matt. With me is Lauren, as always. And if you are just now new to the show, we like to talk about what we're drinking. Normally, we talk about the news. We talk about what we've been reading or watching lately, what we've messed up on the week before. However, we're not going to be doing that today, but you can still find all of our episodes by searching Hops Geek News on any podcasting platform, any social media platform. And then if you feel so inclined, you can support the show, patreon.com/hopsgeeknews. We use that for, any sort of platform we record on, Comic-Cons, all of that really good stuff. So my beer of the week this week is from Cambridge, Massachusetts. If you haven't heard every single episode, I like to remind everybody I'm from Massachusetts because that's just what we do, right? But this one's Lamplighter Brewing Company. It's called Major Tom, a 7.2% IPA. Major Tom is a New England style IPA hopped 100% with Australian grown Galaxy intense tropical fruit aromas from this unique hop balance with a full bodied mouthfeel and firm back and bitterness. I picked it up when I went back home. If you're on YouTube, there's the can. Check it out. It's near Harvard. So if you just happen to be listening to this, you're bopping around Harvard, man, check this brewery out. It's a lot of fun.
I
Lauren,
actually hit it up last week when
you
I was up
did.
in Massachusetts.
You do
Yes.
listen to me sometimes, It felt very good about that.
No, I had had Lamplighter before. You might have even sent it to me. And I know I had it from
I think
another
I
friend
did.
from Massachusetts years ago. And as soon as I had it, I was like, this is fantastic. And it makes me think of the boys because you obviously have
Yeah.
Lamplighter. You're going to be very disappointed in me, though, because what I'm drinking is a premium ginger beer with no alcohol. We just recorded an episode before this, and I did have the Maybach, but we did a lot of breweries on the vacation. So I thought about it. I'm like, I don't really want a beer right now. I know that's a little bit sacrilegious to our podcast, but we always say to our guests, if you don't want a beer, don't have a beer.
Yeah.
I thought about doing the non-alcoholic beer because I always have those at the top of my fridge for those nights that I just want one more. But I went with the ginger beer. But I do have some Treehouse and some Definitive in my fridge, which you will be getting one of each of those to send to you once you get to your new house in Virginia. You will be getting a welcome to your new home care
Virginia.
package. So
Nice.
that's what I'm drinking. A little mini
Yeah.
can from Target.
I'll be picking up beers along the way. I will be stopping pretty much everywhere. Denver, Kansas City for
Ooh.
a couple
You got to go
days.
to Lady Justice.
I do. I'll be in
Okay.
Omaha for a few days, St. Louis, Knoxville, Tennessee. Yeah, we're gonna see the world, man. But you don't care about our adventures. Of course not. That's not why you're here. We're here to chat with a fantastic, amazing artist. Like I said, upcoming comic book called The Schlub coming out from Image Comics this week. Tyrell Cannon has joined the show. Welcome. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's really nice to be here and talk to y'all. It's been a fun day, and I'm excited to chat comics. So
Yes. Comics make the world go around.
yes,
It's hard to beat just a physical copy in your hand with the art jumping at you, the stories, and I almost feel like we're in a really good age of comic books right now because there's just so many good ones to choose from, and you can never go wrong.
I completely agree. I think that there's a special sort of zeitgeist forming right now that's sort of been maybe the last five or maybe a little bit longer than that 5 or so years, and I think it's still got quite a ways to go. There's a lot of creators that have sort of been working adjacent to each other and feeding off each other's energy. It's a really exciting time. I'm really glad that I'm able to be involved in comics right now because it's very exciting for me as a creator.
Oh yeah, no doubt, and you're definitely right. It seems like there's a lot of people that are revitalized, re-energized, and you even see it from a lot of these other people who might have stepped away for comics for a while or might have felt that they're bigger, or you've got these actors, actresses that are delving into the comic book world to whether they write them or like they're reading them to prepare for roles. And it's just like people that you never thought you would have imagined picking up a comic book 10 years ago have one in their backpack or have
Yeah.
them on their dinner table or whatever it may be. It's
Yep.
it's fun, man.
Well, I used to be embarrassed to read them in public. Now I don't care. So I feel like that has kind of shifted as well.
Oh yeah, big time. Now, you are an amazing artist, which shows on this
Thank
particular
you.
issue we'll talk about in a minute. But how did you get into drawing comics? How did you get into the art aspect? Kind of what's your origin story into art and comic books in general?
Yeah, I've been drawing as long as I can remember. Before I ever knew what comics were, I was always a kid walking around with a kind of my security blanket was a sketchbook or a notebook from a young age, and I was always drawing monster trucks and cartoon characters and Ninja Turtles and that kind of thing. And I was reading a lot of Calvin and Hobbes and Family Circus and BC and Garfield and all the Sunday strips. Um, and then as I got a little bit older, my dad he had read comics when he was a kid, and like many people his age, his comics were thrown out by relatives because they're evil and all
How
that,
dare you read these?
right? And so
It's all the
but
ones that are worth a ton now.
yeah, of course, right? Like I wish he had those books because he could have paid for my school. But he gave me some comics one year for like Christmas, and I was like, these are great. And then he took me and my brothers to a comic book store, and ever since that day, I was just obsessed with comics. And I've done a lot of different artistic things, and I went to art school and got a fine arts degree and did some painting and some animation and a bunch of other things. But I always kept coming back to comics, and drawing in particular is something that I've done as long as I can remember. I can't imagine not drawing. Like it's if I go more than a week without touching pencil or pen to paper, I kind of get a little weird.
Understandably, yeah.
Shakes.
Well, it's one
Yeah.
of those hobbies that you literally can just get lost in and you're just gone. And I feel like there's few things these days that can allow you to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a compulsion, but it's also this sort of it's my happy place. I enjoy drawing a lot. And so yeah, I became a big comic book fan and started reading comics in my preteen and teen years, and then went off to college and continued to read comics and expand my horizons into more independently published stuff, and then have come in and out of superhero comics off and on over the years. Started self-publishing my own books while I was in school, and I had a day job for maybe all ever since I was out of school up until about 4 years ago. I've had different day jobs and would make my comics on the side. And then around 2018, 2019, I took the sort of plunge into full-time art making. So that's sort of the brief history of how I got to where I'm at now.
Nice. Now, do you have like a preference kind of growing up? Everybody always lean towards like Marvel comics, DC comics. Was there one? Everybody's is always usually X-Men. Do you have one that you preferred growing up?
Yeah, not to be too typical, but X-Men was a big one for me. I was the first two comics I bought were X-Men and X-Force. And part of that was that my dad was an X-Men guy when he was a kid, and he liked the X-Men and Fantastic Four and Daredevil. And he was always telling me about those. And so before we went to the comic book store, that was something I think I was predisposed to check out. So I bought X-Men number 5 and X-Force number 9. And so it was Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld. And that was sort of like when you're 12, that's perfect. It doesn't get any better than that, and that hooked me really really hard. And so I read X-Men a lot, during that time, and I've come back to X-Men off and on over the years. I was really into the new X-Men run in the 2000s, and I've tried some other things off and on. And I was never really much of a DC guy until recently. I've been reading a little more DC stuff. I think that for whatever reason, the Marvel stuff just connected with me more as a kid, and then the Image and Independent and the newer heroes were more what I was into as I was getting older. But I've really been wanting to get back into X-Men. I do a lot of X-Men commissions and stuff, and I enjoy it. And I'm like, man, I need to check in with the characters again. So I was just talking to a friend the other day about some of the stuff that's going on in X-Men, and I'm more of an X-Men guy, I guess, is the short answer.
Well, no, I mean, I think a lot of, especially as kids, that already kind of resonates to the X-Men. I feel like because as a kid, you're kind of also lost, and you can kind of relate to, you feel like an outcast, like the mutant outcast, and there's a whole bunch of different plethora of things to choose from there.
Well, yeah, there's so many different characters.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the comic book that you have coming out from Image Comics. So obviously the story is written by Ryan Stegman and Kenny Porter, but you do the fantastic art, which if people are a fan of vibrant colors and just things that want to pop out from the page, this is the comic book for you. because right off the bat, right from the get-go, the cover alone is, there's kind of tells you what you're going to get. And then the first page where we're looking inside somebody's mouth, the way it's drawn, I hate the dentist. I hate the mouth.
I think everyone does. And there's the one scene where the guy goes to use the dental tool and like the bad guy's actually scared. Like I laughed aloud at that because it's like that's relatable to everybody. Like I've never met somebody who's like, I love going to the dentist, especially when they use that one tool.
When they scrape your teeth. Ugh.
Yeah, Ryan Stegman in particular is not a fan of dentists, so he said that this is his revenge against dentists. I don't have a particular dislike of dentists. I mean, I don't like to go and I don't like to pay for it. Right. But I think that was something that was pretty interesting right from the get-go for me when they pitched me the book. Was like, I couldn't think of anything else with a dentist as a main character, and they seem like a sort of a marginalized community. And I know that there's high suicide rates and stuff in dental work. And so I was like, this sounds like a great place to start from, a guy who's his own worst enemy and is in this profession that nobody likes, nobody likes a dentist. And then to give that person godlike powers, I thought, wow, what a great starting point. And it really is the starting point for the story is that, like what happens when this terrible person gets wonderful powers and when this hero is stripped of their powers.
Yes. So before we kind of dive into that stuff, how did this story come to fruition? How did the team get together, and like, what was the initial like pitch to you? Was this something that you were straight up on board with, or was it like, all right, interesting?
Yeah, well, I had sort of socially become acquainted with Ryan and Kenny through mutual friends, and really got along with them. I had done a pitch for a comic with Kenny 3 or 4 years ago, for like a giant, like a mech comic, actually. Before he did DC Mech, I pitched a mech comic with Kenny, and I really enjoyed working with him, and I thought he had great ideas, and he was really fun to work with. And knowing Ryan, just through, like I said, mutual friends, I was like, this guy's great. He's fun. He's kind of a jerk, but kind of fun. And so we were talking, and I was working on other things, and they were working on other things. And Ryan told me that he had this project that he had pitched to Image already that he was originally going to write and draw. And Image had already accepted the pitch. But then right after he got that pitch accepted, he got a call from Marvel like, hey, do you want to do this thing with Donny Cates? Do you want to work on Venom? And he sort of got sucked into that. And, the rest is history, as they say. That kind of run had a big effect and was a really amazing run. Yeah. And he... so after a couple of years of that, he's like, man, I still want to do the Schlub, but I don't know where I'm going to work it in. And I had just finished up doing Beef Bros, a comic I did with Aubrey Sitterson. And I think he really liked what I did on that and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this book with me and Kenny? And I said, absolutely. Like, cause they're people I consider friends, and I respected their work a lot. And it was funny because he asked me, and I didn't really know what the book was about at that point. I was like, sure, I'll do it. And he said, well, do you want to know what it's about? And I said, well, sure. But like, you guys are great, so I would love to do it. And then they told me the pitch, and then I was like, well, absolutely. This sounds 100% like something I would love to do. And so at that point, he had already written kind of a rough outline, but it was sort of the bones were there. And then once he got Kenny on board, Kenny started to flesh it out. And then I started designing the characters. So none of that had been done yet. And so we were able to kind of shift. I think that once Kenny and I got involved, it kind of morphed a little bit, and we started adding our ideas in, and it shifted. And so now they write the scripts, and I do the line art, and we work in a sort of a Marvel style where they give me a lot of leeway on what I do with paneling and stuff, and then they go back through and do the dialogue balloons. But that's sort of the short version. Like, I knew them, and they needed an artist, and Ryan liked my stuff, and we were off to the races.
Yeah.
So is there a lot of back and forth, or you guys felt like, because it sounded like you guys were all pretty much on the same page? Like, we've talked to some people, they're like, yeah, we had to go back and forth quite a bit. The artist wasn't really painting what I was seeing in my head. But so did you have a more efficient process than that?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's, I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've had the privilege of working with a lot of great writers in different capacities as far as what they would give me and what I would give back to them. And what's really great about working with Kenny and Ryan is that they're 100% on board for the idea that comics are this interplay between the words and the images, and that the best stuff is stuff that tries to have both sides consider what the other's doing. And so what happens is they kind of do a writing meeting separate from me, and then they'll write the issue outline, and then they send that out to me and to Kenny and Ryan. We all kind of look at it together, and then they give me an opportunity to contribute any ideas I have. And then that goes back, and Kenny does a more formalized version that breaks it up into pages. And then I do the art, and then they go back and do the lettering after that. And the other thing that I think I maybe forget or take for granted is that we're old, and so we're on a Skype call together very often. Skype is the thing that nobody uses anymore, but we're on Skype all the time.
I mean, we still have Skype. Yeah, we were using that recently. You're good.
So
yeah.
There's a group of artists and Kenny, a writer, and some other guys that are on a Skype call together, and we share each other's work and give each other critiques. And so we're always on that call goofing off. And so honestly, anytime any three of us are on the call and have an idea, we bring it up to the other people on the call and say, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of this? Or, hey, I read the script and how about this? And so there's a lot of really open and free conversing about the ideas in the book. I would still say like Ryan and Kenny are writing it for sure, but they've been very open to, a small example is, in the second issue, there was written, okay, there's these two characters and they're like side characters. And I was like, well, what if there was three characters? Okay, great. And what if I made them all look a little different from each other? Okay, great. And then I did that on the pages, and then they came back and really fleshed out the characters, the dialogue. And that was really fun because it felt like, a natural way for background characters to sort of come together and become, maybe more a part of the story. And now those three characters they're through all the way through the sixth issue, which I'm working on right now. And that's, they've gone through the whole story arc together. So that's been really fun. They're really easy to work with, I guess, is the short answer. Kenny and Ryan are great. And Ryan is an artist as well. So he understands that, the artist can contribute a lot visually that can affect the way you decide to write the story. And I'm glad that they give me the room to do that.
Right.
Yeah. And I will say that this comic, every part of it, everywhere I look, there was details. It's like sometimes you can read a comic and you're like, okay, that's Spider-Man flying through the city, but it's not very detailed. Not to dismiss anything with Spider-Man. Obviously, we love Peter Parker and all the Spider-Man, but everything was so detailed where I literally had to stop and like look at all of the things where sometimes I find like I'm quickly just going through the story and not paying as much attention to the art. So I could tell like especially like the dentist office, to draw like a detailed dentist office like that, like you can tell that you put a lot of like heart and thought and like pen to paper.
From the opening page alone, you're looking from somebody's mouth out to him, and the detail that you put inside this person's mouth. It's just
the lady
incredible.
Then she looked like she was from The Walking Dead, and she still has the stuff on her. Or the one panel almost from her perspective with her eyes over and over. I thought that was really cool.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad you guys noticed that. I like to put a lot of detail and stuff. People like Jeff Darrow are a big influence on me. And I think that I like the idea that people can take something, a comic is this great intimate physical object. And I like the idea that you're going to hang on to it and you might go through it more than one time. There's comics that I have in my collection I've looked through hundreds of times and I still find new things in them. And so I try to put as much interesting things in there as possible that can flesh out the world or help expand on the story in some way, or they're just funny, hide my friends in there, put little Easter eggs in there. So it's really fun. And I think it makes it elevates it. Hopefully I hope that it elevates it past just a thing that you read for entertainment value really quick and then forget about,
Right.
No,
well, I feel like a lot of, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up Easter eggs, because I was literally about to ask, like, with the amount of detail and love that you poured into this comic, did you hide little Easter eggs throughout that you're kind of hoping people would catch, or something that you would know that's hidden in there versus anybody else reading it?
They're all over. Some are just going to be funny to me. Other ones are I think people will pick up on. I hide a lot of my friends' faces and names in there. I make an appearance in there. My daughter's in there. I hide my daughter's name in different spots. There's a rat that has gone through many of my comics that makes an appearance in there. And I'm curious to see who notices these things. The first issue has, I don't know, 5 or 6 different little hidden things in there. The second issue's got a lot more. Third issue, probably even more. So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, if people start catching them, that'd be great. I might start doing little bumps if people are not catching them, but it's just a fun thing for me. It's like you're sitting at the table all day, and you could just draw a background, and it gets kind of boring. It's kind of nice to just add a little crack in there, or spell your friend's name in the title of this cereal, or whatever it is. Just something that makes it a little more personal. So
I feel like you've made it like a highlights magazine as well.
Yeah.
Like find all these
Dude,
objects.
yes, I loved highlights growing up, and
Yeah.
probably
And
a
we
big
would read it
influence
at
I
the
didn't even know.
dentist.
Yeah, right.
But actually, I was going to say, like with the Easter eggs, I feel like a lot of the things that become like cult followings do that, like because they're things that people end up loving, and then they go back, and it's almost more fun to pick it up the second time. And like you said, going back and finding things like you look, like Kevin Smith, Tim Burton movies, Supernatural. These are things that there's Easter eggs littered throughout that only the top fans will pick out. And I feel like it's always nice to do something a little extra for the people who are the big fans and not the casual. So it's something the casual reader and the big fan can just appreciate a little bit more.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome.
I think another aspect that I really like in this is, so it's a story essentially about a guy who feels like the world's just kind of out to get to him. And he's also divorced. And I like we first see him, he's like this balding, middle-aged, short, like pudgy guy. And then we cut to his
When we see his
ex-wife,
wife,
Sarah. She's a smoke show, man. Like, was that something like that was told for you to do? Or you kind of like, this could be a fun spin on it?
I'm trying to think of the original conversation. I think, as I was designing the characters, it's always tricky to find that balance between, realism and exaggeration, and where the lines are. And I tend to go pretty big and broad with this. But with Sarah, I wanted her to feel sort of realistic to some degree. And she definitely, I find the character a little more as the series goes on. She's only in a couple panels in the first issue.
mm-hmm.
And as the series goes on, I think I find her a little bit. But I remember talking to Kenny and Ryan about it and being like, well, is she, what's she like, and they said, she should be pretty. And I said, okay. I tried to, as I develop her more, I try to make her, I guess what I would think of as sort of a more natural looking, beautiful person, rather than a typical comic book top cow lady,
Right.
kind of. I didn't want to go that direction. I wanted her to feel somewhat relatable. And then I think what it does for people is that it maybe subverts some of your assumptions about who Roger is, and about who she is, and about who Roger maybe was before and who he is now. And we all have, I mean, some of us are lucky and we've punched up in the world. And I think Roger did that at some point with Sarah, but then maybe he blew it. And she's one of my favorite characters in the comics. She's very sweet and she's very genuine. And I tried to draw her that way and not make her a sex symbol, but I didn't want her to feel like an exaggeration the way Roger's character is an exaggeration of a type. He had to feel a little more broad, slightly more comedic, and slightly more exaggerated, I think. And then she is almost, to me, the thing that humanizes him. He has a connection with her, and she seems kind of like a normal person, maybe a good person, an attractive person. And she's like, okay, something happened here where he's the worst, but maybe there's something in there,
Yeah, she says you're not a bad person. But when she says you can't keep playing the victim, I got an idea of how that relationship ended.
100%. I was gonna say, because the way that your art and the words kind of poetically kind of merge together, you, without saying, you guys really do say a lot, because you, like you just mentioned, you painted this picture of, she's like this soft, kind of like warm character that you kind of gravitate to, and then just some of the words and things that she's saying to him over the phone, it's like, all right, you can make your assumptions now. And yeah, like, they spent a decade together. So there's obviously more to the story, where you even see this very realistically in real life. There's always two sides of the story, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right. Yeah, that dynamic is really interesting, and I can't reveal too much, but it feels like it's pretty close to the heart of some of the book. And I'm really excited for people that have picked up on the same things you guys are mentioning to see kind of where we go with it, because I really feel like it's going to have some great moments for people as they read along with these characters and see how they change.
Well, because when the swap happened, you had in your idea, okay, she said you got in certain ideas that you didn't know how those were going to play out. And so, yeah, I'm curious to read more to see more so how it plays
without
out.
a doubt.
So you mentioned obviously you enjoyed writing this and you worked well with the writers. Is that typical for a lot of the time when you write? Because this isn't the first comic you've ever done. So is that typical for you? Is it usually a pretty easy collaborative? I don't want to say easy, but a very collaborative, kind of all on the same page, so to speak, process? Or was this one a little more so?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty fortunate. So for a lot of the time that I've been making comics, it's been a thing I do on top of like a day job. And the nice thing about that is that I did whatever I wanted and I was in total control. And so I wrote and drew all my own books, and I did quite a few books during that time. I did a lot of shorts, I did a lot of, mini comics and a couple longer projects. And in a way it kind of ruined me in some ways because you have ultimate control. But as I've grown into the collaborative part of making comics, I've found it to be really exciting and really reinvigorating, and really helps you to find a new perspective on the things you're trying to do. And so with other writers I've worked with, for example, I worked with a guy, Matt Mare Lowry. I've done a couple short stories with him, and he's great. He did an anthology called Thoughtscape Comics. And he was a good mix of different styles that I've had, where he would give me a full script with panels called out, but he left a lot of leeway. He said, well, if you feel like something might work differently, let me know and we can try it. And then other times he would just say, this is an action scene, go for it. You know what you're doing, you do your thing. And I've worked with other writers that are much more specific on the paneling and a little more prescriptive, and those have been a little more challenging. But honestly, as long as the writer is really open to a dialogue, I find that that's really a good place to be. When I don't have any contact, well, I haven't had this happen, but if I was to work with a writer and not have any contact with them, that would be, I think, really challenging. Like I think I was saying the other day, sure, it'd be great to work with Alan Moore, but I don't think he'd get on the phone and talk with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if that would be great. I would much rather work with someone else that wants to come and have a free exchange of ideas. And when I worked with Aubrey Sitterson, it was a similar thing. We would get on the phone and talk about the whole story and all of our goals and the things we wanted to accomplish. And then he would go and write and then send it to me. And then I would go and draw, and then we'd come back and sort of, see where we went with there with the dialogue. And it was really fun because, the collaborative part of it to me feels like it has to be a collaboration, not just a workflow for like a machine, not like I don't want it to feel like an assembly line.
Right. Yeah, right. Like
it's right. It feels like there needs to be some interplay and some back and forth, and you get, in my opinion, I think you get better results. And so that's 100%. Sort of the way it's been with these guys, and that's maybe not typical, but typical for me as far as my experience. I've been really lucky to work with some really gracious writers that were very excited about the collaborative process.
So I thought that was interesting that you said, so when you have more instruction, you find that to be more difficult than when you have more leverage and more ability to be creative.
Yeah, I mean, one end of the spectrum, I mean, both ends can be challenging, but one end of the spectrum is the person who writes a script that prescribes everything that's in every panel and every word balloon and how many panels on every page. And then also when you turn the art in, they want to adjust it even more. Right. That's one end of the spectrum. That's Nightmare Planet, right? And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the writer who's totally absent and doesn't want to give you any information. Somewhere in the middle is people that are very collaborative, or another writer I worked with was Seth Jacob, who we did a sci-fi book called Astrobiology. And Seth would put paragraphs for every panel. But he said up front, he's like, pick and choose what you like out of here. And that's a fun way to work. It's a little more work because I have to pare down things to what I think works. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of fun in a different way because it sparks so many ideas within me. And so he's somewhere in the middle too, And so that middle area is probably the best place to be.
Right. No, that makes sense. That's awesome. It's like a pick your own adventure.
I was literally thinking that it's choose your own adventure kind of thing. Exactly what I was thinking.
Do they even sell those books anymore?
No, I was about to say we need those to make a comeback. Like I know Netflix tried to do it, but it doesn't really work.
Yeah, there was the Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
It was
but it didn't catch on because then you wanted to go back and you're like, well, what did I miss? Because I wanted to go back and watch the other parts of it.
That would be a fun, like a comic books ever did something like that.
I feel like my kids would love that.
I would love it because
I've been toying with the idea. Honestly, I have a book I've been doing with my brother called Eris. It's a sci-fi book, and I told him, I was like, what if we did for the last issue, we did 3 different issues, and you can choose which one is the story ending. I don't know if we'll do it, but it was kind of a fun idea. I was like, what if there's like an ABC, and you can kind of decide what ending you want to see, and you can read all of them if you want, but one of them can be your canon, like this is my ending, and this is sort of like Mass Effect or something.
Yeah. See, I like that. I know it's a little harder in comic books because you're kind of, narrowed down.
Well, they're short already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
28 pages or so. There's already a lot.
Well, you could be like, do you want it to go this way? Now you venture off and you read but yeah, that could be a nightmare with how much do we produce of each book.
It's harder
a lot of drawing.
Drawing the companies to be like, all right, we're going to print how many different things?
And people are going to be like, these are just variant covers, right?
Right. So we'll see. Really, I don't know.
I love that idea. Sign me up. If you guys absolutely go ahead with that idea, like sign me up. Because now speaking of, do you have that one dream job, like that one dream comic that you just have been dying to write and that you're hoping to get to write one day?
Well, a big lifelong dream of mine was actually to have a book at Image. So having the Schlub come out at Image is a really big deal for me. Like, one of the first comics I ever bought was Wildcats. And when Image started, my brothers and I, there's 3 of us. We have a sister too, but she wasn't reading comics. But like the 3 of us were like, all these Image books are coming out from all of our favorite creators from the Marvel books. And so we all like called which series we were going to buy. So my older brother got Youngblood and Spawn. So he got the first 2 Image books to come out. And then I got Wildcats. And it's because I was a big Jim Lee mark. I still am. And so not only having a book at Image is a big deal for me, and I'm feeling really great about the opportunity. But I would love to do a Wildcats comic, honestly. I think they've tried a few times to bring them back, and I just don't think they've quite got it right. And I think you get the right artist on there, then maybe you could do something really cool. And then the other one would be X-Men. I would absolutely love to do, if I could do like just one X-Men issue or story, I could die a happy man.
So who's your favorite X-Men?
That's tricky.
There's only one right answer, but we'll see.
Everybody's got their favorites. It shifts for me a lot. I think lately the character that I feel the most connected to is probably either Storm or Colossus. I really like those 2. I grew up a Wolverine guy. I think that's more my brother's character now. I've got a soft spot for Cyclops and Nightcrawler as well. But yeah, Colossus is a lot of fun to draw, and I think he's an interesting character. And then Storm, Storm is like, to me, the heart of what the X-Men are. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, she's like that leader always.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people too, going back to your other point, as a lot of people always, they think, when they think comic books, they think the big 2. However, what a lot of people don't realize is that Image, for example, are just fantastic things, regardless of what the story is. Like, there are a lot of great comic books out there, as we touched on earlier. Branch out would be my biggest advice, is just branch out from your normal big 2. Like, not everything has to be a traditional superhero. As we see in this particular issue, there is a very big twist at the end, which we're not going to spoil here because we want you to read it. It comes out this week, August 23rd, when this airs. And so, yeah, man, like, I love that you said Image, because I love a lot of what Image does. My first Image comic, because I kind of grew into them later, was Ice Cream Man, for example.
Oh, cool.
And
mine was Walking Dead.
Very
cliche first Image comic, but
at least it's not Saga.
But that's fair. My wife's was Saga. We actually have Lion Cat up on the wall. Favorite. Yes.
Invincible was one of the best comics I think I've ever read.
Great.
People don't realize, like, Image, what I know them for is going the more, they don't pull punches route, in my opinion. And you kind of get that in your guys' issue too. Like, there's some things that you guys do here that I really hope people read, first of all, because I really, really enjoy this. Like, we don't just, pump tires. It's, if we truly believe in the product, is what we love to do. And I hope people read this, because you guys are taking it a very interesting route between the writing and the art that you have done. I'm really excited. Does this have like a set arc of issues? Is this kind of like, we're just going to keep going? Because, everybody kind of has like, oh, this arc 1 is 9 issues. Arc 2 is X issues. Do you guys have a definitive on that?
Well, the first arc, I'm working on the 6th issue, which wraps up this first arc. And if people like it, we have, I every issue I'm drawing 6 or more new characters. You know, like we're building as much as we can. Big world. You know, we want to have a variety of things that are possibilities, and so we would love to keep going. You know, obviously, if nobody likes it, we won't. But if people love it, we have so much more story to go. And the 6th issue is sort of kind of like I feel like the first issue kind of scratches the surface of what we got going on in the first arc, and the first arc just scratches the surface of what we could have happen in the book. I think that there's so much room for us to build out where these characters can go and where we can go with the different worlds that we have in the book. There's these different realms and these different, you know, superpowered characters and villains, and so yeah, I mean, definitely 6. You know, we definitely have the 6 going, and the 6th issue should be done soon, and you know, we're going to be definitely on time. And then if we can keep going, we will have a second arc that would start sometime after that.
Yeah, you could tell there's a lot of backstory too that can be told.
Like you said,
just
you
from,
scratch
you know,
the surface, you can tell that from the get-go. And I'm coming to your house. If you guys don't buy this comic, I'm coming to your house.
Well, just wait. I mean, I keep telling people, like, you know, the first issues are great and important, but it just feels like there's so much that happens. Like, it's weird for me, like, as the artist who's already drawn so much of it, to think about what people feel about the first issue, where I know there's all these twists and turns that are so cool. I'm so pumped when I get the new scripts. It's so much fun to see what Kenny and Ryan have planned. And you know, I think once people have it in their hands, I think they'll get it. They'll understand that it's not just some joke comic. It's like there's a big story here that has heart and it has stakes, you know?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, even where you guys leave off in this first issue, it's got to have people coming back because there's so much potential here. And I'm excited to physically hold this in my hands to see the art from the pages myself, because again, it's hard to beat physical copies. Absolutely one of my favorite things is just holding a physical copy of a comic book in my hands and just seeing with my eyes. And so thank you for sharing this with us, and then thank you for, you know, jumping on and chatting with us.
Anytime, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are digging it. It's been really fun to see people's reactions. I can't wait for it to be out in the world. You know, I've been in the self-publishing world for a while, and it's kind of always just pushing, and it's nice to think that somebody could go on the shelf and just find this and see a cool cover. You know, like I think that we got some great covers. You know, I got covers in every issue. Stegman's got covers in every issue. The second issue, I think, you know, I think that's the kind of cover that hopefully people will see it and really dive in and enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Now, before we go ahead and wrap everything up, what do you have any upcoming Comic Cons that you're attending? Where can people generally find a lot of your work?
You know, I'm hoping to do some more this next year. I just wrapped up the only conventions I was doing this year. I did C2E2 and then Heroes Con and Chicago Alternative Comics Expo Cake here in Chicago, which I'm one of the organizers for. So I don't have any more on the agenda for this year. So I'm hoping next year, but I will be doing a signing at Challengers Comics here in Chicago on release day, August 23rd. And then on the 26th, I have a retailer variant at In This Issue Comics in Bettendorf, Iowa. So I'll be signing there on Saturday, the 26th. And then if people want to check stuff out online, a few different things. So there's TyrellCannon.com is going to have links to everything that I mentioned here. So if you don't hear it all, just go to TyrellCannon.com and check it out. But I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky as TCannon Comics. I'm on Patreon as TCannon Comics. And if you get on my Patreon, you get access to my entire back catalog. You get discounts on commissions, and you get early previews of anything I'm working on. And then on my YouTube channel, I've been trying to do streams more often. So on Tuesdays, I try to jump on and draw and answer questions. And then once the book is out, I will do original art walkthroughs of every issue. So, you know, looking at the original art on my YouTube channel. And then I believe our plan is on the KLC Press Substack. We're going to do some director's commentary with me and Kenny and Ryan, going through every issue and sort of giving you behind the scenes on what we were trying to accomplish in each book. So if you subscribe to KLC, not only do you get access to the issues early, but you'll get some cool special features. So there's a lot of places you can find me. Go to whichever one you're most comfortable with. I'm happy to see you on any of those platforms.
There's a million of them out there these days. I feel like every
So
time
many.
I turn around, it's like, hey, there's this one. There's this one. I'm like, I can't keep up.
It's like I'm too old for this shit. I have to have my kids had to show me how to use TikTok.
My brain, it can't keep up. But C2E2, that's C2E2 and San Diego Comic-Con are definitely kind of goals for me to get to someday. So that's pretty awesome. I didn't realize you're an organizer. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
hopefully I see you at a couple Comic-Cons out my way next year. I have 3 that are within
Yeah,
the
I would
2 hour.
love to be a little more all over the country next year. I'm hoping that with the book out, I can visit some more. I had hoped to do New York City this year, but wasn't able to get in. And I do C2E2 pretty much every year, and I have yet to do San Diego as an exhibitor. I've been a few times as an attendee, but that'd be fun. So yeah, I'd like to hit the coasts and see everybody and say
Yeah.
hi. I love meeting people at shows. If you ever see me at a show, please come talk to me. I love to talk to people and look at the books with them and see what they're enjoying.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Lauren, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think you summed it all up. I loved the comic. I definitely am going to pick up the next one. And this is going to be, since it's Image Comics, is going to be widely available at the local comic book shops because that's my favorite place to buy them. Awesome. He's nodding his head. That's perfect. So, yeah, support your local comic book shop, drink local beer, and
Yes, absolutely.
yes,
Yes.
support anything. And yeah, go ahead.
If
That's all I got.
I was gonna say, if for some reason your LCS does not have, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to figure out why they wouldn't in the first place. But if for some reason they don't have it, request it. You guys can request comic books.
Yes.
They have a certain deadline that comic books are, to be by to request. So if you happen to find this, pick it up. And then if you want more, tell your local comic book shop because that's how they know what to order, especially from a lot of these other industry publishers. Say, hey, this is a really great comic, have it. So do more of that. Get to your local comic book shop, hold the physical copy. You'd be hard pressed to find a better time in life. Go outside, read it on the back porch. And then, of course,
Not in Florida, though. You will
ugh,
die.
gross. No, gross. Ugh, yucky. But all of the links that Tyrell had mentioned, that I have mentioned, are going to be in the bio of this episode. So if you happen to forget because we're talking too fast for you, well, good news. It's all in the bio. Thank you all for spending your time with us. Tyrell, thank you so much once again. We can't wait to come back, hopefully a few issues down the road, or maybe at the end of
That'd be cool for the
arc
next
number
arc.
1. Yeah, at the end of arc 1 to bring you down, run down the arc.
Absolutely. I would love to come back. I mean, we'll definitely have a trade coming out too. So I would love to come back and chat about it some more. It's an honor to be on the show.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everybody. You know where to find us. We'll be back next week with more amazing content. Amazing to us. My mom said, Lauren's
My mom
listens
likes
to us
it.
anyways.
Yeah, she's a Patreon.
But yes, hang out with us and we will see you next week. Cheers, everybody.